Hello, welcome to another edition of Issues with Jide. Here we talk about actions and inactions of those who shape our national landscape and how these affect us positively or otherwise. I'm Ibrahim Shita. Today on the show, defense and internal security takes largest share as President Buhari presents 2022 budget. And later on the show, we'll be discussing the federal government state of emergency threats in Anambra over incessant killings. Joining me via Zoom, the master himself, Babajide Kolade-Otitoju. Thank you so much for joining us, BKO. Right, BKO, if you can hear me, let's start from the presentation of the 2022 budget by President Muhammad Buhari, where he unveiled a record of 16.3.9 trillion naira budget, with a projected 25% year-on-year rise in government spending as the economy struggles with the impact of the pandemic. Do you think this budget has a silver bullet to transform Nigeria's current situations to what the citizens would love to see?
Do I think what?
Do you think this budget will have the 2022 budget has the silver bullets to transform Nigeria's current situation to what the citizens would love to see? BKO.
No, I don't want to appear like a doomsday prophet, but the president already gave us a hint of the problems that we are likely to encounter in the course of the year. If you are budgeting about 5 trillion naira for borrowing more funds, it says clearly that you are capable of coming up with humongous budget figures that are largely unrealizable. We have not in the recent past met our budgetary revenue projections. The 63 revenue generating agencies of government are not doing enough for us to be able to fund our budgets with the revenue that we generate internally. So as much as the government would want to continue to deliver infrastructure to the Nigerian people, it is constrained to rely on borrowing and borrowing and borrowing. Now, the minister, the Senate president, and his people in the National Assembly have been accused of simply accepting any request for from the president to borrow more funds without thinking of the implications of excessive borrowing. There are Nigerians who do not want to hear us talk about the fact that the more you borrow, the more you create problems that will rear their ugly heads in the coming years. You've got to set aside money for budget debt servicing. And already the quantum of money that goes into debt servicing is troubling to the discerning Nigerian. The discerning Nigerian knows that we cannot continue along this path. So this is another budget that certainly will go the way of budgets before it. Already, we have even exceeded, we've exceeded by the end of May, we've exceeded 50% threshold in terms of debt servicing, in terms of the money that we set aside for debt servicing. It means that we are going to exceed what was budgeted for in the 2021 budget for debt servicing. And that is not good news at all. These sums of money going into debt servicing can be used to deliver infrastructure to our people. But the more you borrow, the more you are constrained to pay back. And these debts, you have to pay these debts back in precious foreign exchange. So we know that this time that the Naira is weak, it means that we've got to set aside more Naira to be able to pay for some of these debts, to be able to service our debts. Is a commonsensical thing that this is not the right way to go. People will say, oh, they are spending money on infrastructure, but how much longer can you go? Can you continue to borrow? Now, one of the things that made me happy a little bit yesterday was that the Senate president, who once said that whatever the president does, that the National Assembly will be willing, whatever the president asks for, the National Assembly will be willing to give to him in a manner that suggests that he is just a mere rubber stamp Senate president, has now told the president that he should look for alternative means of sourcing revenue so that this borrowing of money can go down. So it means that the Senate president himself is already in tune with what Nigerians are saying, that look, we can't continue along this path because it's not sustainable. Our debt to revenue ratio is not encouraging. If our debt to revenue ratio had been encouraging, then no one will complain about these debts that are coming from left, right, and center. Some Nigerians who want to deceive us talk about our debt to GDP ratio. In the case of Nigeria, you cannot use debt to GDP ratio to justify borrowing so much money. You need to use the debt to revenue ratio. If you are not generating enough revenue within the country, then the question then is, where are you going to find the money to pay back this debt, the money to do your debt servicing? It means that you will then need to go out and borrow more money. So this is a deadly cycle that we got ourselves into. And I can project that even this year, in this 2022 budget, we are going to exceed the amount of money budgeted for debt servicing because the value of the Naira is sliding on a daily basis, and those debts are meant to be paid back in dollars. So are we going to continually dip into our foreign reserves to be able to pay back the debts that we owe our creditors? A time will come when we will no longer be credit worthy, when everyone will simply turn away from Nigeria and refuse to give us, to loan us money at the rate we are going.
In that light, President Buhari confirmed the previously published 2022 GDP growth forecast of 4.2% and an inflation projection of 30%, which would be achieved by enhancing tax and excise revenues through reforms and administration measures. But is this not threatened by the face-off between some states and the federal government on federal income tax?
I don't see how even that projection. I think the World Bank projection is extremely optimistic. Businesses are not doing well. Manufacturing is the centerpiece of economic growth and development in any nation. We are not doing well. Many of these manufacturing companies are closing down production lines because they cannot access the dollar. The SMCs are also struggling. The business climate in our country is just not good enough to attract investors. Since 2016, the year 2021 represents the worst for us in terms of attracting foreign direct investment. So I do not feel confident that an economy that has been that has recorded a growth rate just in the region of 1% can move to 4.2%. I'm not the sort of person who will be extremely optimistic about this. When businesses are doing well, the capacity to make money from taxation will be huge. The way it is now, our taxation to GDP ratio is just about 7 or 8%, which means that we will not be able to earn enough money from taxation. We will not be able to earn enough money. We will still remain extremely dependent on petrodollars. That has been the problem with our country. We are extremely dependent on revenue coming from crude oil sales. And now the president is telling us that even what we are earning from crude oil sales is hampered by the huge sums of money that we are paying by way of subsidy. So what do? Do we simply stop this subsidy regime? Because
that's the question.
Naturally, a country should be excited that crude oil prices are going up. But we can't be excited as a country because a lot of that money goes to paying subsidy. So the revenue, the distributable revenue that should be shared to the states are progressively going down, incrementally going down, because a huge chunk of that money goes to subsidizing imported petrol in our country. Our refineries are not working, though the NNPC came up with one garbage the other day that they made some profit. Who is going to believe that kind of story? What kind of profit was that? We are from refineries that were not even producing a gallon of refined petrol. So where did the subsidy come from? Where did the profit come from? That must be voodoo economics to a lot of people. So things are going to be tough. More companies are going to go under the present economic climate unless the government takes some revolutionary steps to reflate our economy. We've been talking about diversification of the economy for so long, but we do not actually see it in real life.
Okay, well, by and large, BKO, how would you say this administration has achieved or has done with each budget spending since the beginning of its second term? Talk about 2019 up until now.
Budget spending or budget performance. What exactly?
Performance, precisely. Yeah, performance, precisely.
I think the goal of the president in quickly coming up with the budget for the coming year is to aid budget performance. You can see
BK, looks like the bandwidth is a bit having a bit of a glitch now.
Over the
BK, can you hear me?
Few years, been hell-bent on ensuring that the budgets the coming year, budget performance, on even release of funds. The release of funds, in some cases, even the works ministry, the funds are not released. A mechanism by which funds are released in the third quarter of the year. You have a lot of critical capital projects that need to be executed, and it takes time. But if funds get released so late in the year, it will affect the budget performance. The administration is trying its best to improve on budget performance. And one of the ways by which they are trying to achieve that is to get this budget released in good time. They've done well in that regard. One can only encourage them to continue along this line. But budget performance is dependent heavily on availability of funds and release of those funds promptly.
Right. Well, makes sense. So we'll see how the whole of the budget spending, the performance for this 2022 or this current one that is ongoing. We'll see how everything pans out at the end of the day, as just we keep monitoring. But let's quickly change the line of thoughts. Let's change tack now by talking about Anambra state of emergency, where Governor Obiano of Anambra State says President Buhari was not in support of state of emergency, describing the Attorney General statement as unfortunate. What impression does this give you, to start with?
Well, this is not the first time that some aides of the president would make some remarks that are uncharitable, and the president would clearly distance himself from such remarks. The truth is, when the president weighs the implications of the remarks that the Attorney General made in apparent anger, then the president, as the father of all, would then determine whether it makes sense to support his minister in such a situation, or simply to try to douse the tension, to calm things down by saying, look, I do not support the idea of a state of emergency. When Governor Obiano won the election, he went to Aso Rock to thank the president for not getting involved, for not using federal might against him. So there has always been a good relationship between the president and the governor of Anambra State. And he's always described the president as the good father, the father of all. So once the Attorney General made those remarks, the governor went straight to the president to try to find out if the president was on the same page with the Attorney General. And the president told him, look, I do not agree that a state of emergency was necessary in Anambra State. And I also do not believe that a state of emergency is necessary. The elections will be held. The reason we have greater violence in Anambra at this time is because of the approaching elections. Some of these things happening in Anambra are actually orchestrated by politicians, and not just IPOP. It's not right to simply attribute every violence going on to IPOP. So politicians are at work. And like the governor said, some people are trying to rig the election by instilling fear in the people. Then, of course, the notion that a president can declare a state of emergency and sack a governor and bring in a sole administrator who will run the state for 6 months is absolute rubbish. The 1999 Constitution, Section 305, from beginning to the end, does not give the president the power to declare a state of emergency, in which case elected officials would then be sent packing. There is no such provision. The president has not got those powers. Yes, former President Obasanjo dissolved elective positions when he came up with a state of emergency in states like Ekiti and Plateau State. But Obasanjo used the 1963 law. The 1963 law, as far as I'm concerned, is antiquated. It is the 1999 law that governs the present democracy that we are running in our country. And the president of Nigeria has not got the powers to remove any elected official through a state of emergency. He can come up with some extraordinary measures, security measures meant to address insecurity. But the measures available to him do not include removal of people elected, validly elected by the people. So the people of Anambra can rest assured that even if a state of emergency was introduced, the governor will be in his position. The House of Assembly members will hold on to their positions. That was what happened during the Jonathan years. But elective structures were not dissolved. So this president will not dissolve elective structures even if he chooses to impose a state of emergency anywhere. Of the Constitution can request for a state of emergency. He can, by the proclamation of the House of Assembly, by the 2/3 majority decision of the House of Assembly, the governor can proceed to talk to the president and invite the president to declare a state of emergency in the state. So it's not even the president alone who can do that. Before the president can even declare a state of emergency, the National Assembly must give him the all clear. He has to seek permission from the National Assembly. So people who sit down in their homes believing that the president can simply just impose a state of emergency in another state and send governors and House of Assembly members back in, they don't know what they are saying. That's not going to happen. And I do not think that the situation in Anambra has reached the point that you can declare a state of emergency. Anambra is safer than Ebonyi State. Anambra is safer than Imo State. Anambra is safer than most of the states of the North Central and the Northwest and even the Northeast. So there is no basis for the statement that the Attorney General made in evidence, anger, and he should be condemned for making such remarks.
Just like you said when you wanted to respond to the first question, you said this is not the first time the president, in my own words now, errand boys will be saying one thing and the president coming out with another. Are the present people misreading the body language of Mr. President, if you relate very well with the word body language there?
Yeah, I do not think so. I've seen the president go against the body language of his own aides.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, the president can be misled. He's been misled on a number of occasions. But at the end of the day, he has to take the best decision. He is the person to take that big decision, not even the Attorney General. The Attorney General has not got the powers to impose a state of emergency anywhere. The Attorney General is the chief law officer of our country, but it doesn't mean he's always right. He's taking matters to court before and lost. So it doesn't mean that whatever he says is gospel truth or that the Attorney General can never do any wrong. No, not even this one. So the point that I'm making is, he said so, what he said was his opinion. And certainly in this case, his opinion is antithetical to the president's opinion. And the president has made that clear to the governor of Anambra State and told him that, look, I do not believe that there should be a state of emergency in your state. And I align with the president that there's absolutely no reason in the world to declare a state of emergency in Anambra State just because 15 persons were killed in 2 weeks. I've seen 88 persons killed in Kebbi State in one day. I've seen 120 persons killed in Katsina killed in one day of emergency. I've seen Nigerian soldiers, up to 80 of them killed in one day in Borno State, and nobody imposed a state of emergency. So there's no reason in the world to impose a state of emergency in Anambra State just because 15 persons were killed in 2 weeks. There's no reason in the world to do that.
All right. Anambra election is just a few weeks away. With the attendant security crisis and the utterances here and there, do you feel there is more to this than meets the eye? One, and again, are you optimistic that the election will definitely hold come November the 6th?
I can tell you with my full chest that elections will be held in Anambra State. In 2011, Boko Haram was throwing bombs on election day. It didn't stop Nigerians from electing their leaders. There would be shootings here and there, but at the end of the day, elections will hold. All that is needed, and the good thing is that this is an off-season election. Because an off-season election, we have all the time in the world to prepare for it, deploy sufficient troops, deploy sufficient policemen to the area, take control of the area, and ensure that people can go and if you are losing their lives. So what government needs to do is to beef up security in the area. Ahead of the election, as we speak now, candidates are campaigning in some places. Even today, the ABGA candidate, Professor Chukwuma Soludo, campaigned. And he had a large crowd at his campaign ground. So this election will hold. We should stop putting fear in the hearts of our people because of isolated, violent combustions here and there. It is going to happen. It's normal. And it's not Anambra alone that is facing this level of violence in the southeast. As I said to you, Anambra is even safer than Imo State. Anambra is safer than Ebonyi. They have burnt more government buildings in Ebonyi than even Anambra State. The level of business going on in Anambra is higher than other parts of the southeast. The Onitsha market is there. You will not hear that the market was closed because of violence. People are going about their normal businesses. So it has not reached the point when anyone can come and tell us that no, there is no law, there is no law and order, there is anarchy, therefore we can't do elections. Elections will be held in Anambra State because even the Constitution does not envisage what will happen in case you cannot do an election. The tenure of the governor is a matter of, it's a constitutional matter. He can't stay in office beyond the time allotted to him by the Constitution. So this is the thing. Elections will hold. There will be violence on election day in a few places, but elections will hold in Anambra. So even the last election, we had some skirmishes here and there, but the election still held, and the governor was elected. So I'm confident that we would have elections.
Right. That's BKO for you. He understands Nigeria, he knows Nigeria, and before he brings up any opinion or any prediction, he definitely understands, everything, all the parameters before he arrives at a conclusion. Well, special thanks to you, Babajide Kolade-Otitoju, for those insightful analyses as always, and thanks to you, to our audience, for joining on every edition. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, TVC News. Click on subscribe button to get the latest information. I'm Ibrahim Shita. See you again next edition. Bye now. Thank you.